Welcome to Stand Out from the Crowd, the podcast dedicated to helping professionals and leaders amplify their voice, impact, and influence. Are you ready? Let's go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome on this new live episode of Stand Out from the Crowd with me, your host, Doreen Benamara. If this is your first time here, you are welcome, of course, too. And Stand Out from the Crowd is the podcast that is dedicated to helping leaders amplify their voice, impact, and eventually income. And so, what we do here, we invite standout guests that are experts and thought leaders in their industry to share, their perspective, their best practices on how we can become, the best at what we do and how we can become the leader we were meant to be. So, without further ado, I will ask you to help me welcome our standout guest, Kim Araman. Hello, Kim. How are you doing?
Hello, Darine. It's such a pleasure to be on the show again.
Again, yes, actually, you were one of my very first guests over a year ago now. Time flies, and I'm so blessed actually to have seen you grow as an entrepreneur and as an individual as well. So, thank you for coming back on the show to share your expertise, Kim.
No, thank you so much for having me, and it's such a pleasure, seeing also you grow, and other people that we are connected with,
Yes,
within the past life, how things evolved. It's crazy in terms of how many things happen. It feels like a lifetime ago,
exactly.
in terms of how many things pass. So I'm super happy to be here with you and with our guest today as well.
Thank you. And yes, a lot of things can happen within a year. People, so commitment, dedication, every day doing a little is what, help you to get concrete and tangible results over a certain period of time. So before we get into our conversation, Kim, for the people, let the people know who you are. So, Kim, you are a career coach and interview expert. You are the founder of Nail Your Interview, helping professionals reignite the spark in their career and help them land their dream job. So, where does this passion for helping people landing their dream jobs comes from?
I think you were cutting for 1 second, but I got you. I think you were saying where does this passion come from, right?
That's correct. Yes.
Super. So I think it's for me it's very simple. So it came from my own situation, right? In a sense that I was in a similar situation where I was moving from one job to another. My average, I would say, time spent in one company was below 2 years. I think my maximum was 2 years, which is a short time within the span of a decade of my professional career. And I used to feel at the same time, there was always this excitement at the beginning when I joined a new company because I was joining, exciting companies with big brands. And I'm passionate about brands as well. So there's always this excitement at the beginning, new people, new process, and everything. And then slowly but surely, there is this, routine coming in and settling in. And I had this itch where I was like, okay, what's next? Like there is something where I didn't feel completely fulfilled. Like there was a part of me that still felt like there is something missing. Like I don't know what it is, but I can't find what it is. And other people seem happy, but I can't see myself just doing the same thing over and over again, right? And this
Yeah.
is where I decided that my passion for interview coaching was really prominent, and I decided to make it much more than interview coaching, because it's really about career, about finding that motivation, about finding that spot and that spark in your eyes when you speak to someone and they speak with so much passion and so much drive about that one thing that really excites them. It doesn't need to be a big thing, but that's one thing that really excites you, and how to make that one thing something you would want to have every day if possible, and to make a business out of it, or to make, your work revolve around it.
Yes, and I'm sure like there are quite a few in our audience today, and I'm sure many of you actually, including myself, I can relate 100% to your journey, Kim. So of course, there is a before and after COVID-19, right? Even though I know the UAE did an amazing job at, preventing the virus to spread, did an amazing job limiting the impact on the well-being of its people and the economy the the businesses, right? But still, there is a before and after COVID-19. So have you observed from your perspective, Kim, any changes, for example, about what job seekers are looking for in a job right now?
100%. I would say, like, Dubai is an example, of course, as you said, as one of the countries that really, I would say, stood out and was able to maneuver their way throughout COVID in a very efficient way. I think we were one of the only countries where we were in a lockdown for a month, like total lockdown, let's say. And then we never went into total lockdown after that completely. And they managed pretty well, because, of course, Dubai is a country that's very prone to having tourists.
Yes.
So that's one of the main driver, and that's not something that you could suddenly stop, because when we did, obviously, there was a financial hit. And with that, I think it's actually where people during COVID time, and we had time to reflect and think about it more. It got people not just necessarily only in Dubai, but across the world, because I was looking at articles as well that were saying that more than, I would say, around 60 to 65% of people that are currently working, in the corporate world or in organizations, will look at changing their jobs this year in 2022.
Wow,
65% of
that's
companies.
huge.
Imagine the turnover and the turnaround on, people that actually realized how important work is, how important career is, because it's, 70% or more even of what we do. So why not enjoy what we're doing while we're doing it? Because you might have a choice of actually doing it. I think this is where people got to realize that, I don't need to sit and to settle for something if I don't necessarily have to. I can do something about it. And this is the change that we see, I would say, definitely in Dubai, but also across other markets, because I also have clients across other markets. That you can see that people actually decide that even if they've been waiting for, some of them, 5 years, and saying, okay, I'm not happy with what I'm doing, but they keep having that thought, but they're not doing actually something about it. This is the year where people are actually making decisions for themselves, for most of them, to actually do something about it and take that change, or actually try and change something, so they can bring more fulfillment in their work and their career life as well. This is the big change that we see, I would say.
Yeah, and I would say you mentioned it. The key word is fulfillment. People, they don't want to work because they have to, but they want to work because they feel like they are contributing to something that is bigger than them. And actually, let me pull out a graph that is coming from the oh, and I don't have it here, so I will pull out the graph so people can see it. That is coming from the latest KPMG report. So this one is focused on women's leadership and employment, but actually this is very close to global studies that are available at the moment, which is, look at this. If you compare only in the UAE 2019 versus 2020, you will see that, like, prior to COVID-19, meaningful and purposeful work environment was at the bottom of the list. It was in the top 5, right? But it was at the bottom of the list. 1 year later, COVID-19 happens, and then you see that meaningful and purposeful work environment is at the top of the list, right? So what you're seeing actually, uh, uh, Kim, is quite accurate, because now people want to give a sense, to what they are doing. We don't work anymore to pay the bills. We work to feel fulfilled and to have an impact. So now we know you are based you have clients all over the world in different markets, but you are based in the UAE, and we know that the UAE mainly relies on an international, a global talent pool, right?
Yeah.
And here in North America, we talked about the great resignation, right? This is a catastrophe. People like are leaving their workplace every single day, thousand by thousand by thousands, and we are in a stage where uh, companies have to slow down their activity because they cannot find people to work for, to work with. They cannot hire people. Why? Because now people, as you said, in the same light as you said, they have different requirements. They
Mm-hmm.
have different
Mm-hmm.
requirements in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion. They want to work for companies, who that values their employees, and that they create a positive and well-being culture for the employees and for the workplace at large. We talk about also people declining high salaries because they would rather uh, take a job with a lower pay, but where they feel fulfilled, as you mentioned. So, how do you see the job market in the UAE adapting, adjusting themselves, their companies, how they adapt their HR recruiting process based on what's happening on the other side of the world?
I think what you said is very true. So there are trends, right, that happens even on an HR perspective in terms of companies that capitalize on trends, follow trends,
Mhm.
obviously both for a positive and personal benefit from it. So diversity and inclusion is, I would say, a term that we've been hearing for the past year and a bit more. But obviously, it's become a bit more common to hear about it. I would say in this part of the world, at least not in yours, but in our part of the world, more recently in the past few months. And
Okay.
companies, I would say, all of them say we want to do diversity and inclusion, right? In terms of things, some of them do it right, some of them do it just to add something on the paper where we're saying, we're, a company that promotes diversity and inclusion. But when we look at what rules you have or how you promote internally and whatnot in terms of biases, do you actually do that? Not necessarily. Maybe you want to be, you want to achieve that down the line, but you're not necessarily there at the moment. And I think
Mhm.
it's good because it also gives them awareness of, how companies are and what they do. But what does that mean for job seekers? As you said, it's people these days want very different things. And I don't think the corporate world, I'm not talking about startups, I'm talking about, multinationals and everything. I do not think they're set up as they are today to adapt for the future of what job seeking and, employment is going to be about. Some of them do, of course, because they offer the flexibility at the expense sometimes of work life balance. All of them have pros and cons. You don't have all of it is pros and all of it is cons. You have like a mix between both. But I think a lot of companies today are still not catching up with how we see employment moving forward, right? A lot of them, for example, they didn't ask, I'm saying a simple thing, they didn't ask their employers to come back because they realized that productivity was actually higher when people were working from home sometimes versus than working in the office. Not necessarily, of course, for all of the functions, depending on what you do. Some of them, requires heavy software, whatever it is, 100%. But in general, they realized that maybe we don't need to have a physical big office, right? Maybe we don't need to force our employees to be there 100% of the time. We can give them that flexibility. We can give them a work from home because in Dubai, I would say 90% of people are not locals. They're not, from Dubai. You would give them the flexibility to be able to work from their home country a few weeks, a year, for example. All of this, we're not there yet. A lot
Yeah.
of companies are not there yet. And I think for companies that will want to stay very much recognized first as best workplace to be in, right, in the marketing world, because we have these surveys and whatnot in terms of things, or I would say attractive to the younger generation, because it's not only about us, it's about the younger generation that's coming. They're not attracted by big names anymore. Yes, we have Coke, we have whatever it is, in terms of names, but a name is not enough anymore.
That's
People need
very
more. It's not just about the paycheck. It's not just about the name. It's not just about, I would let go of a name, I would let go of a paycheck if I get, as you said, the purpose, if I get, the drive, if I get the well being, if I get more benefits, if I'm happy where I am. Because what's everything else if you're not fulfilled and you're not happy? What are you going to do with it? It's only temporary. And I think this is where the lag is coming from. I would say I'm very, very excited to actually see how our company is going to evolve and how fast are they going to evolve for that next generation that's coming. That's I would say if I have an itch, you would have, like, them being 100 times more feeling itchy than I do, right? Because they just want everything now. They want everything. They know everything before it comes out. The trend happens,
Yeah.
and in a few hours, we wouldn't even say in a few days, the trend is gone. It's not like before where the trend, on social media lasts for like a few days, a few weeks. We're talking about a few hours. And it's the
Mhm.
same in the work environment. So I'm super excited to actually see, not just in Dubai, but even across the world, how do companies adapt with, with the new, I would say the new employment of how people want it to be, because then we realize that we do have the choice.
We do, and actually, Robert is saying, I agree with you. That Kim, most are not set up for the new world of work. And you mentioned Kim, like talking about, for example, diversity, equity, and inclusion is quite recent in the UAE. Here in North
Mhm.
America, we have been talking for a little bit longer about it, but still we are not set up. As you said, companies are not set up. A lot of companies, they talk about it, right? Because in terms of employer brand, it's important to talk about it if you want to be able to attract and retain talent. But you cannot fool people anymore, any longer, because they will ask people working within your company, okay, how does it look like? How do you feel about it? Is the company how is the company's culture, right? People are asking those questions. So like really, and I think we would all agree on this, most companies are not set up for the new world of work. And we have more people joining us live. Thank you for joining the live. This is your opportunity to ask questions, to leave your comment. Let us know if you're looking for a job, if you are transitioning, how is your workplace adjusting to the new world of work. So my next question to you, Kim, is in regards to your area of expertise. So you help people with interview skills, resume writing, and much more, helping them find the right direction for their career. So what is the skill, or maybe what is the thing that people lack the most when they come to you?
Well, one is interlinked with another, I would say. It's knowing themselves, but not knowing themselves in, in the superficial level. It's really deep, like a deep knowledge of who you are, what makes you unique, and what you stand for. Why would the person or the company hire you for the roles you are applying versus someone else? Therefore, again, selling yourself, because it's both interlinked. Knowing yourself will allow you to sell yourself in the best way possible during that interview or on that resume, to be able to be attractive for employers. Sometimes it's not about having self-confidence issues, it's not about having something else. It's about having a story and knowing yourself enough to be able to portray it in an attractive way that will make you, stand out from the other people and want to be selected for this role. This is, I would say, the biggest thing, because everything else is just technicals that is easy to be learned. And obviously, I teach that to my clients as well. But really, the first essential piece of the puzzle is really focusing on a deep knowledge of yourself, which doesn't come overnight. Of course, it's something that comes because it's an evolution, and you're not this you are, as a person, you keep growing. Even if you know yourself today, if you don't do the exercise, you need to keep discovering and knowing yourself to be able to grow the same way in the future.
That's very true. And talking about self awareness, as you know me, and for those of you who have been following me for quite some times, I am big on women's leadership, right? And helping women develop their leadership potential. Um, but you know, the comment that I get often in terms of women in leadership is, we say that there is not enough women, okay, which is true. And actually, a few weeks ago, the 18 companies from the private sector in the UAE have signed a pledge to boost women in leadership roles, with the goal to achieve at least 30% of women in management positions in the next few years, right? So, but the conversation that I have often with HR leaders is, on one side, we have companies who are challenged, who struggle, that struggles literally to hire or to boost women into leadership, either internally through their promotion, like politics of promotion, and or to hire external talent. That's one side, because again, we have talked about it, they are not really set up yet to ensure that their recruitment process is diverse and inclusive. But on the other side, and that's something that we don't talk often, you know, is the way the lack of self-awareness, or maybe self-doubt or imposter syndrome among women who have great experience, great expertise, and that could pretend to apply for those leadership roles and senior leadership roles. They don't, because I don't know if you have seen the data, but when it comes to applying for a job, for a man, I think it will be less than 50% for him to qualify based on the job description, for him to apply, right? When for a woman, the percentage is much more higher. If a woman feel that she doesn't meet 90% of the requirements for a job, she won't apply. So is that something that you see in your work? Is that something that sometimes you have a client, she's like, okay, I'm looking for this type of job, and when you look at her resume, you're like, but hold on a minute, why don't you apply for a senior role? Because that's something you can do with your expertise.
100%. I think, that women being in leadership position is not something that was, I would say, the norm a couple of years back. So I think, in a sense that, yeah, Robert. So just responding to your question as well, at the same time jumping, it's
Yes.
90% for women that
Yes.
look at the job description, and why? Because I would say, and again, it's not discriminate, because I don't discriminate against men, because for me it's not just a gender specific thing, it's
Mm-hmm.
also a personality thing, in a sense that if you're a person that's very harsh on yourself, and women tend to be very critical, like, very critical about themselves, and their expectations are very high, they would put, the expectations for them to be able to have a promotion or the level up. If, again, if as we said, if the male puts the bar, at, I would say, two levels above, the woman will put it like four levels above, in terms of double the work and double the commitment. So if, for example, you would need to have like a 5-star across everything for the women to feel comfortable and safe to be able to maybe think about asking for that promotion, because we're so critical about ourselves that if we receive one feedback along the way, only one, amongst your trajectory for the past, I don't know, for example, a few months, it will it will allow the imposter syndrome to kick in, and then
Yes.
ask yourself, am I good enough to have that role? Whereas the male might have, maybe, for example, again, not to discriminate, but just hypothetical example, might have over the 6 month everything great, but maybe he had two feedback instances, but he would not even focus on these, because he would focus on the fact that, he is built up for that, because that's how society also brought us up, like from generations and generations before, right? Even our parents' generations and before. This is only changing now. That we were never brought up in a sense that you see women leaders in the house, right? You see your dad, probably. Not, I would say, maybe in some instances, our moms, but again, this is very recent. You don't have the woman going to be a CEO, or, whatever it is. So that's not the norm. Even for guys, because as sons, they're also not used to seeing that. So it's something that's changing, that we're not quite there yet, because there is a lot of of imposter syndrome. There's a lot of doubts. There's a lot of, cultural traditions and everything that comes in play that is not easy to change within one generation.
Yeah.
As much
Yeah.
as we push and we promote, women leadership, and we say that, we know that women, and not everyone, because again, it's not about being discriminatory, but not every
Mhm.
woman can be a leader. Same as not every man can be a leader. It's not a gender specific thing. It's also a trait, character trait. Do you have the capacity to be a leader in that particular position? Yes or no? Because being a leader is not easy. And unfortunately, what women think is that we were, I would say, brought up to think again recently that if a woman wants to be a leader, then she has to be tough, because
Yeah.
she has to prove to males that she's tough, that she has to have a voice, that she has to have whatever XYZ. And maybe that's not necessarily something that you feel like you are that person. So maybe you would, in some instances, for some female, it would help you think like, but do I really want to do that? It's not really me. And this is, I would say, where the mistake happens, because it's not about, of course, it's not about being weak. It's not weak or strong, but you don't necessarily have to step on someone's toes to become a leader. Look at leaders that are males around you. They don't necessarily all have to shout out to be heard, right? They don't have
Mhm.
to, put their foot down every time to be heard. Maybe the males that you would look at are the ones that have a vision, the ones that inspire, the one that shows you that there can be change. Same with the women. It's not about having someone that's strong. You can be strong if that's who you are, but that's not necessarily every fit. It's the same. So, giving a brief example, just for people to understand what I mean, same as with the beauty standard of concept, the concept of beauty. Remember at the beginning we were saying, for you to be, you to be a top model, you only need to be like this, skinny, whatever, blah blah. Now we're doing the same thing, where we're saying to become a female leader, you need to be strong, you need to be, no, but it's not just one thing. You have different areas, you have different types of leadership. You have different types of leadership for both men and for female. It's not a one size fits all kind of thing. And it's for females, that are listening to us and watching that recording, to understand that there is no one size fits all. You can create that change. You don't need to look at that change if it's not there. You can be the change. But don't let one thing stop you from getting there because you think you're not exactly like that person. That person is just one example. But remove the gender part of it and look at males that you associate with, if that's more helpful, that are role models, that are, more maybe, aligned with your traits, your character traits, that will help you achieve that. That's the very big misconception also that happens.
Yes, that's very true. And this is where actually self awareness is very important because, like, the more you are aware about what you can do and what you cannot do and what you want to do, the more you are empowered. And it's important in order to lead and to have an impact, to lead from a place that is empowered and empowering. And so again, self-awareness is really, really the key element. This is the base of everything for you to decide if that's something you want to do or you don't want to do. Like, and as you said, like, it's not a gender thing, but it's important also to look at the data. So let's take the example of imposter syndrome. Everyone is affected by imposter syndrome. No matter who you are, at some point, most of us, we experience imposter syndrome. But where it's important, to work on self-awareness and to put in place programs or a culture to create workspaces where women can thrive, is that when you look at the data, and everything that we are talking about today is public data, so you can do your own research. 75% of women, once they are in a leadership position, feel like an imposter, which is a high percentage. This is a high number, right? And we have another
Yeah.
comment and question actually from Robert, who says, it's definitely a personality thing. I'm with you on that. How do you overcome the harsh of self-criticism? Hmm, that's a good
That's a
question.
very good question. um I would say, well, actually, we're all, we all tend to be harsh, I would say, or tough on ourselves, right? Because we're all want to be, I would say, or aspire to be perfect, because there is no such thing as perfection, but aspire to be as good as we can be, let's say. So when something doesn't follow that path, we obviously tend to stray off course, and then it's harder for us to accept it. But I would say overcoming harsh self-criticism is more importantly to understand that we cannot be perfect, but even CEOs are not perfect, right? Everyone makes mistakes in terms of things, but that's the learning curve, and that's the path you should be on. Because if you're only getting success, 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 and there is no, hurdles along the way, then you're not actually growing. Then you're not actually learning. So it's about accepting that criticism, validating it, not, negating it or rejecting it. Accept it, but then don't dwell on it so much. Take the learning that you need to take from it, whatever lesson that you're taking from it, but then remind yourself as well why you're good at what you do. Accept the criticism, but then also remind yourself, if you're becoming too harsh on yourself, what achievements you've done, why are you good at what you do. So it helps you balance that criticism and that harshness on yourself, so you can stay on your course in terms of things.
And anyway, no one is looking you talked about like the different leadership styles, but something that is important to notice is that no one is looking for the perfect leaders anymore. People are looking for leaders that are relatable, leaders that have a story, leaders that they can feel connected to. That's what people are looking in leaders nowadays. So this old era where you have to portray perfection to be this perfect leaders, a leader who knows it all, it's over. That's not what move people anymore, and that's not what motivate and encourage people to take action anymore. So be yourself. As I like to say, we are perfectly imperfect, and that's what make us relatable. Kim, thank you so much for your time today. That was, as usual, I wish we could have like longer conversations
More
because
time.
you always drop some good nuggets when I bring you on board. So thank you again, Kim. That was great to
Thank
have
you,
you.
Doreen.
For the people who watch the replay and who may have any questions or who want to know more about how you can help them, where can they find you, Kim?
Well, actually, they can find me on LinkedIn. That would be the easiest thing. I think you've tagged me, so it's very easy for people to message me. Just send me a DM. I usually respond back straight away. I mean, straight away within the next 24, 48 hours. So I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. I think that would be the best place for them to be able to get in touch with me if they want to.
And if you don't follow Kim, follow her on LinkedIn because her content is simply bomb. Okay, and very informative, very educative. It's a mix of edutainment. I like this word. It's trending to edutainment. But really, follow Kim on LinkedIn and do not hesitate to contact her if you have any questions. Kim, thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone. And I will see you next week for another live episode of Stand Up from the Crowd. Bye bye.